An Azure specialist from Microsoft. I'm joined by a couple of gentlemen next to me that will introduce themselves. I'll just grab the clicker. So tonight is it's the first event of its kind, right? So we've decided to do a collaboration between two local user groups in Brighton. Myself and Jack run the Sussex Azure user group, and we're joined by the team at Brighton AI as well. So far as we know, this is the first time that two user groups have come together and put on an event together. So thank you everyone for coming. I'll hand over to you.
Hello. Quick overview of the agenda. We've got three fantastic speakers for you tonight. So clearly we've passed the drinks and food. I think the food's actually gone. So if you've got a token, then you can get a free drink with that. If you walked in and you did not get a token, you should still be able to get one at the front. Token gives you one free drink. After that, you're going to have to buy them at the bar. We're going to have three speakers, each of which is going to do round about 20-25 minutes each. Very short break between each, just for a quick comfort break. Stand up, stretch your legs, straight back down again. And we're going to focus first on Microsoft's AI strategy, and then two different presentations looking at responsible and ethical AI and its implementation, which I hope you'll agree is a really important topic. We hope to end the formal part of this evening at 8. We'll do panel Q&A, and you can ask the speakers anything you want at that point. And we're open here till 9 o'clock for networking and drinks afterwards.
And we thought we'd give you a bit of an intro because some of you may have found us from Brighton AI, some of you may have found us from the Sussex Azure meetup. So we thought we'd do a little bit of an intro and a self-plug of both user groups, just so you know who we are. So as Ryan said, we founded the Sussex Azure user group back in 2019. Been running for a number of events. Like we did do monthly, we're now bi-monthly, we did quarterly, we've flipped and flopped between various different things. We focus on the Microsoft Cloud Platform, so everything to do with Microsoft Azure. We also stray into the identity space and some of the on-premise technologies and hybrid cloud, but basically anything in that cloud space is welcome. And we've had speakers from customers, partners, people who are MVPs, Microsofties, basically anybody who wants to come and talk and share their experience on the cloud platform. If you are interested in signing up, please scan the QR code in the bottom left-hand corner. You can join our meetup group and find out when our next events are, which is sometime in July, hopefully.
Late July. Date might shift.
Yeah. Also, we have all of our previous talks on YouTube, so you can head to our YouTube channel and see all of the fantastic talks that we've had in the past, and also our WhatsApp community. So if you want to get involved and you're in the Microsoft Azure space, then scan the QR code to join the WhatsApp community. There's a bit of tech support going on in there. There's a bit of latest announcements, latest and greatest, and also announcements on what's coming up on the latest groups and bits and pieces like that. And finally, whilst a lot of the speakers you'll hear from tonight are from Microsoft, this is all done out of our side hustle, right? So we're doing this because we like doing what we do in the community. This is not a paid-for event by Microsoft. It's very much
warranty support.
No warranty support, yeah. So if you ask us any questions and we give you an answer, we will deny everything afterwards and say this is not Microsoft official. So yeah, please do take it with a pinch of salt, and it's our own opinions tonight.
Thank you. And just to do the same for Brighton AI. So we set up Brighton AI back in September, October last year. The response from the community has been absolutely fantastic, really high interest in this, which is, after all, a fairly transformational topic. We have set up a pretty broad church in our approach to talking about AI. We're looking at, could you just flick that on for me? Looking at both technological aspects, ethical and legal aspects, and also looking to try and drive actual projects within the community. And the 6 people that you see up there are the 6 people who came together to to take this forwards. We continually look for more people to help us drive some of the activities and the subgroups that we're trying to get off the ground underneath that. And if you have any interest in being involved in what we're doing and helping drive some of this forwards and trying to build a proper AI community and AI specialisms in Brighton, please come and see me or Claire or BC, who's here tonight. I'm pretty sure Rose is. Hello, Rose. Haven't seen you yet. Rose is here as well this evening. And Martin, are you here as well? No. Well, you've got 4 of us here anyway. So please come and see us and have a chat with us. Ryan, would you? So those are the 3 main tracks that we're focused on: innovation and commercialization, which I lead with Claire; Brighton and beyond, which Martin is leading on; ethics and governance that BC, who you're going to hear from directly tonight, and Matt Thompson are focusing on. Lovely. And here is where you can reach us if you want to get in touch. We have a website. We've got email. You can reach us on LinkedIn. QR code will take you to, actually, I don't know where it'll take you, probably to the website. Try it and find out. Thank you, Ryan.
And yeah, this is something that we run every time that we do a user group. Sussex Azure also applies to the wider community as well. So this is our diversity charter. If you think that any of these values aren't being met tonight, please come and speak to one of us. But basically, everybody is welcome, regardless of background, regardless of anything. So yes, very important.
And tonight wouldn't be possible without a few key sponsors. So all of those drinks tokens that all of you have picked up have been kindly sponsored by Secured IAM. Those of you who attend the Sussex Azure User Group, this is Michael Duddington's company, who he set up recently. He's not able to join us tonight, but hopefully he's tuning in remotely. So thank you again to Michael for everybody's free drink. If you're interested in anything around the identity and access management space in Microsoft Cloud and wider, then do give Michael's company a follow. Also, scan the QR code to follow his LinkedIn page. He's posting lots of stuff around useful blog posts around Entra ID and how to secure that and how to govern that in the best practice. Michael also used to work for the Microsoft Entra ID product group. Very knowledgeable person in this space. So do go and give him a check out. Next one, please. Also, thank you to our hosts tonight, Platform 9, to the staff working behind the bar and giving us a hand setting up and tidying up later. Much appreciated. Do check the website out if you're interested in co-working. Graham.
And I'm going to plug this one, mainly because it's my company. So Atacop are sponsoring the venue for this evening. So I'm thanking myself for doing that, but it gives me an opportunity just to make sure.
Massive thank you to Graham.
It gives me an opportunity just to make sure that you're aware of Atacop. Atacop is a Brighton-based specialist in the development of AI solutions and providing AI strategy and roadmap development, AI engineering, data science, etc., for the whole gamut of generative AI. I put the quote up at the top there. It takes 20 years to make an overnight success. I've actually been in AI for more like 35 years, and the last year and a half has been quite a ride. Atacop is just so much fun. If you are interested in working with us, partnering with us, if you think you've got something to offer, or if you need AI specialism in your organization, please come and see us.
And we'll just pass to Charlie
to
talk about Silicon Brighton.
Thank you very much.
Just before Charlie starts, we couldn't do any of this without Silicon Brighton. So thank you, Charlie and Grace, who are both in the room, helping us organise these events, AV, all this stuff. So thank you very much. But Charlie,
absolutely, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
To explain who Silicon Brighton are
Yeah,
for those who don't
guys,
know.
thank you very much. That's so nice of you to say. My name's Charlie. I'm here running the AV and all the tech tonight, but I also work in events and community engagement for Silicon Brighton. We are the hosts of Brighton and Hove's tech sector, and we have the great pleasure of supporting over 30 different meetup groups across the city, including Brighton AI and Sussex Azure's user group. All of our events are free to join, available to people at all ability levels, and they're all hybrid. So you're all welcome to join us here in the room, or hello to anybody who's watching us online on the YouTube stream at the moment. All of our work would not be possible without the support of our supporters, all of whom you can see up here. And we need you. We need some more support. We need some more help in a variety of different ways. Maybe you might be interested in coming and speaking as a speaker at one of the user groups, or volunteering and helping out at an event, or becoming more proactive as part of one of the meetup groups, or maybe there's a business who you know who might be interested in supporting us. We need all the help that we can get, and if you can, please do. These are our values. I'll let you read through these whilst I'm talking, but we look to uphold these at all of the events that we work on. And if you feel at any point that these aren't being upheld, please come and talk to myself or my two colleagues, Grace and Maureen, who are both here tonight as well. And you can follow our socials and see all the amazing work that we do on there, on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter/X, and Silicon Brighton, and TikTok, all at Silicon Brighton. You can join our Slack community, where you can stay as part of the conversation in between the events. There are groups for both Sussex Azure's user group and Brighton AI's. If you scan the QR code there, you'll be able to join the Slack space. And it's also, you've caught us in a really, really fantastic point in time at the moment. It's the middle of May, which everyone knows is a really great time to be in Brighton anyway. But we're partnered with Brighton Fringe this year for the first time, which we're so excited about. And is how we delivered Brooke, the amazing singer-songwriter who opened the evening for us today. Actually, can we get a round of applause for her quickly? She was fantastic. All of the events that we're doing throughout May, we are having a creative act come and open up the night for us. And if you use discount code Silicon at the checkout on Fringe website, you get a discount on any tickets that you purchase there. This QR code will take you to the Fringe website where you can see some of the amazing shows that are throughout the month. And yeah, as I say, it's a fantastically busy month for us. We are tomorrow night launching a new group called Breaking Breadboards, which is all about tech hardware. On Thursday morning, we are at Shelter Hall with Marketing Matters, talking about new Google consent mode. And then if you want to do the double on Thursday, you can go to People Planet Pint at the Walrus in the evening. And then on Tuesday next week, we're doing Tech Jumpstart at Freedom Works as well. If you scan this QR code here, you'll be able to see all of the events that we've got through May and beyond. And that's me. Thank you guys so much for coming. Have a good one.
Thanks, Charlie.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so that's enough from the four of us, but a massive thank you to all of our sponsors and the Silicon Brighton team again. I'd like to welcome Matt to take the podium and get ready for his talk. And we're going to cover the strategy and what Microsoft has to offer in all of the AI services that we've been investing in recently and publishing and doing a lot of announcements about. So Matt's going to give us a whistle-stop tour of everything that's available. So Matt, over to you, sir.
A round of applause for Matt.
Thank you. And yeah, I should say it's an absolute pleasure to be here. I live in Brighton. I've been in Brighton for about 15 years, and it's just fantastic to see all of this stuff going on. I was going to stand at the podium, but it's such a nice-looking audience. I think I'm going to have a sit down and have a relax as well. So, yeah. So again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. So in my role at Microsoft, I predominantly look after financial services customers. So before half of you walk out the room, it's not actually as boring as it sounds. And whilst you might have a view of financial services as being very slow to move and very slow to get anything done, actually, we've seen quite a sort of a shift in the last 18 months. And I've got to push the button. I know. Which one do I push? Oh, the right button. Of course it is. Absolutely. So, the interesting thing is that there's something about large language models that's really triggered the financial services community to make a shift, and probably a lot of it is cost optimization, and we'll touch on some of that today, but also productivity. So, over the last sort of 18 months, LLMs have kind of grabbed all the headlines. There's a new LLM every day. But I would kind of argue, whilst you kind of get carried away in the noise of reading about the latest, greatest LLM that has been released into the open source community or by a private company, what is the point of having the latest, greatest LLM or any LLM if you don't have the tooling ecosystem? That means you can bring things to your customers. So if you don't have the tools surrounding those large language models to allow you to develop applications and get them out to market, the latest LLM is kind of pointless. The other consideration is what's the point of having the latest large language model, bit of a mouthful, if it doesn't have an SLA, if it's not robust, if it potentially generates reputational damage for your business by swearing, using bad language, producing unintended consequences in chats. So you have to think about all of those things when you think about LLMs. So I'm going to be talking today about a couple of things, but I'm going to be mostly talking, because I work for Microsoft, so I'm a little bit biased, about how Microsoft has been taking some of the LLMs that are on the market, including OpenAI LLMs, and starting to embed them not only in the tool set that we have to allow you to build your own applications, but also in pre-built applications. Okay, so a little bit about the partnership between OpenAI and Microsoft. So OpenAI is largely, and you've probably seen a lot in the press about various people resigning and then coming back and things like that. It's largely a research organization, or it was intended to be a research organization. So Microsoft's formed a very close partnership with OpenAI, invested a huge amount of money. Now, what that money roughly translates to is a home for OpenAI to train its models. And training those models is incredibly compute intensive, which translates into very, very, very expensive. And so Microsoft, being a hypercloud provider, can provide that infrastructure to OpenAI to allow them to train these very, very large models. Now, when OpenAI releases a new model, you might see a lot of fanfare in the press. You may also see a slight delay before it comes into the Azure ecosystem, which is Microsoft's cloud. And that is because we don't just take the OpenAI model and dump it into Azure and let people start using it. We test the absolute heck out of it. And that is because we are largely serving enterprise customers. And small to medium sized customers as well. But our emphasis is on ensuring that those LLMs behave predictably. And so if you go and put that into some part of your business, either internal operations or externally serving customers, what you don't want it to happen is it to start generating news headlines. So bit of a delay between OpenAI releasing a model and it coming to Azure, but it's for good reason. So we have the sort of the well-known ones, so the ChatGPT LLMs, so 3.5, which is now the mainstay or the workhorse of lots of applications that customers have rolled out. We've also got ChatGPT 4, which is sort of that next level. It builds in on top of ChatGPT 3.5 a lot of reasoning ability. So it's a many models model. So it has models built into it that a specialist in things like mathematics and science and translation and things like that. So it really is kind of next level. To run more expensive than ChatGPT 3.5. And so we find that, for quite a lot of search-based applications for people building knowledge bases and things like that, ChatGPT 3.5 has had a massive uptake and is pretty much what you need. We also offer Codex, which is for code generation. So does anyone in the room use GitHub Copilot? Okay, so GitHub Copilot, big productivity boost if you are coding. Think of kind of autocomplete on steroids, but also has the ability to document existing code. It's kind of fantastic. And then finally, DALL-E. So DALL-E 3, is the slide out of date? You should say DALL-E 3. DALL-E 3 is the latest text to image and image to prompt model. So kind of interesting, really shaking up the creative industry. Hopefully for those of you that are in the creative industry, you've managed to include some of these creative models in your workflow to make you more productive. If that's a challenge you probably need to address. Okay, so we've talked about a lot about the sort of ChatGPT models where we're used to feeding in text and getting text out. But that's great. But what's really happened over the last sort of 6 months or so is multimodal models, and that's a bit of a mouthful. So not just text that you can put in, but also text and images. So we released ChatGPT 4V, which allowed you the ability to put text and images and do reasoning over that. But with the latest release, and there's probably something I was catching up on yesterday, a new model which allows you to feed in text, speech, images, and video, which allows you to get a sense of the entire world surrounding that large language model. So yeah, this kind of hit the press yesterday. We've just brought and I talked about that delay between OpenAI and Microsoft. Clearly, we're getting better at it because this appeared on the Microsoft website yesterday, which is the release of ChatGPT 4.0 or 4.0, not 0, which also, as I mentioned, includes audio. And so, you know, if you think, well, let me play you a video to see if you can kind of sort of have a think about how this kind of changes the way that we interact with AI, perhaps on a daily basis.
Is the king in residence at the moment?
I don't know if we've got any.
Yes, it looks like the king is in residence right now. The royal standard flag is flying above Buckingham Palace, which is a signal that the monarch is present. How exciting to be there while the king is home.
Try and tell me exactly what they're doing right now, please.
Right now, the ducks are gently gliding across the water. They're moving in a fairly relaxed manner, not in a hurry. Occasionally, one of them will dip its head under the water, probably looking for food, and then pop back up.
I even know when a taxi is coming with its orange light on. I think I'll hail it to get home.
Yes, I spotted one just now. It's heading your way on the left side of the road. Get ready to wave it down. Great job hailing that taxi. It looks like you're all set to go. That's a good dog right there, leading the way into the taxi.
So really interesting. And I think if I wasn't here, I'd probably be at home playing with that now, which I probably will be when I get home. So that's available now on Azure. If you've got an Azure account, you can go and have a play with that tonight. So taking a step back. So all of this is great, right? But if you don't have trust about where you put your data, then kind of all bets are off. And so you have to kind of ask yourself, do you want to put your data in a cloud provider which, you know, potentially uses your data, your IP to retrain a model? So the commitment from Microsoft is that doesn't happen. We're not an ad revenue company. There's a very hard firewall between OpenAI and Microsoft. And there's a firewall between all of our customers in Azure. So you put data into an Azure subscription, Microsoft don't have access to it. We don't reuse it. We don't train models on it. So, and I think that's a really important point for thinking about protecting the IP of your company. You don't want someone else ripping off your wares just because you decide to use some model service. And in fact, if you go on and you just search randomly on Google or Bing today and you sign up for a ChatGPT-like service, you'll find if you look in the terms and conditions that, you know, it's all bets are off. If you put your data into that, they have access to see your prompts, they have access for your training data, they have access for your search data. So just kind of keep that in mind. The other thing, as I mentioned at the beginning, what good is an LLM if it's not backed by enterprise-grade security, single sign-on, and that's common across the entire platform. So today, if you want to take advantage of some of these LLMs, you can do that on the Microsoft platform. I want to kind of talk about a little bit about a term that is a bit Microsoft centric, but I want to introduce the term Copilot. So in a business context, Microsoft likes to point out that you're still in control. So if you're using an LLM to do some kind of work, you are effectively the pilot and the LLM is acting as the co-pilot. So that means that there's a duty of care and responsibility that if you get an LLM to create you an email, you don't just hit send. You should still be in control of reading that and checking that content. And actually, you know, the co-pilot is not there to replace the human. So Microsoft, we think about this in two ways. So we have the kind of the build it yourself co-pilot. So that's enabling you guys to think about a new product that you have within your business that you want to create and how you use those tools to create it. But also what we've done with the LLMs is we've baked them into the tools that you may be using day in, day out. So things like Word, Excel, PowerPoint. So for example, if you're in PowerPoint and you want to create a pitch for a customer and you've got a couple of Word documents that you've already sent to them, you can use that to automatically create a PowerPoint. And it really is quite powerful. So the thing is about the LLMs is it's all very well, but unless you're actually grounding it on your data, that linguistic ability is brilliant. But what we don't want the large language model to do is to speculate or to use or to repeat the knowledge that it's been trained on. We're not interested on that in a business context. We want it to be working on your organization's data or on a document that you have. So if you're asking questions, you want to be asking questions about the document that you have or the set of documents that you have, not for it to speculate or make things up about what it thinks it knows. So I want to give a sort of it's a really basic example to start with, but if we take a sort of an example of a fictitious sort of customer 360 view, in this case, I work in financial services, but let's take it, so you can take it with a pinch of salt, but it's, banking and wealth customer. So it's my customer record. It's a bit fictitious. It's actually making me look a bit better off than I am. But the reality is that if you are a financial advisor or a banking manager and you're trying to serve, lots and lots of customers and you're trying to prepare for a meeting with that customer, trying to look at a view like that, it's quite difficult to take it all in. And so I wanted to kind of represent the idea of, well, how do we use an LLM to put on top of, say, a single customer view to give us an idea of how we can interact with it and very quickly get the sense of what we need to do to prepare for a meeting, for example. So just a really simple example, but putting an LLM on top of this, grounded on that customer record, we can start to ask it questions. So, we're there preparing for a meeting. So, what should I be talking to Matt Hyde about? And so that's bringing in the latest customer interactions, when I last phoned the help desk, information from my profile. During the meeting, so we're saying, well, okay, his interest in the meeting is his mortgage rate is up for renewal. You might want to talk to him about life insurance. But if you think about it in the context of being a really good way to quickly get someone who doesn't know that customer at all off the ground in terms of being able to talk knowledgeably about what that customer has, what products that customer has. Okay, so now I want to kind of take that one step further and think about, well, what happens if we kind of pivot that to an almost human interface with an avatar. So I've got a video now of me just having a chat to one, it's actually a Microsoft partner called Soul Machines. They do a great, really nice sort of avatar. The avatar is really interesting because it uses the webcam, it looks at your facial expressions, it tracks your eye movement, tries to mimic your body language. So let me just run this. You can kind of get a sense of sort of how it plays out.
Konnichiwa. I'm Suki. It's so cool to meet you.
Hey Suki, I was wondering if you can tell me how you might be able to act as a digital banking advisor.
I can provide general information about banking, personal finance, and money management, but I cannot provide specific advice or recommendations on financial products or services. I can offer guidance on how to manage your finances better, such as budgeting, saving, investing, and debt management. Additionally, I can provide information on digital banking options, such as mobile banking, online banking, and digital wallets, and how they can help you manage your finances more efficiently.
That's great. Thank you, Suki. And could you be customized to work for a specific bank?
I can be customized to reflect the brand personality and messaging of a specific bank. This includes aligning my tone and language to the bank's communication style, incorporating specific product or service information, and adapting to any unique features or benefits offered by the bank.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you, Suki. That was great to talk to you today. Take care. Goodbye.
Interesting how you end up being polite to ChatGPT, because it is basically ChatGPT at the back end, but for some reason I just can't avoid being polite. So how hard is this to do it? So there's a couple of first-party services on Azure, the Microsoft Avatar. It's now become incredibly easy to generate these avatars, and they're incredibly cheap to host. So we've now got into this position where with kind of 5 minutes of video of any one of you in this room, we can train an avatar. It can basically be you. So you can be the face of the company. But the amazing thing is now you work 24/7. You speak every language in the world. You have access to every single document and every single database within your organization to be able to answer questions of the customer. So it's kind of revolutionary. So you might be kind of sat there thinking, this kind of freaks me out a bit. I mean, what do we do here about the replacement of jobs? But I tend to think about it in a slightly different way, because if you're sat here in this room and you're starting a company and you've suddenly won a contract or you want to scale, how do you suddenly employ 10,000 call center workers? You know, how do you get them trained up? But I've got a really interesting stat around one of the large retail banks in this country. I won't mention which one. They have 30,000 call center workers. It takes them about 2 years to get a call center worker up to the right level of skill that they can cover all the processes and understand how to do all the systems correctly. The average time that one of their call centers spends in role is 18 months. So there is an issue here, but I think it's also an opportunity for smaller companies as well to suddenly say, now I can service every country and every language in the world in a very easy way. So yeah, you can do this today. You can go and have a play today. You don't have to be in a green room. I've done this myself. You can just record using a webcam, capture some video. You basically read a script. You do some actions. So you move your hands. You do different expressions. It trains the model. It also recreates your voice, which is slightly freaky hearing yourself speaking. So yeah, recommend having a play because it's really quite fun. Now, what I didn't want to do at this point in time is kind of have everyone leaving thinking Microsoft is all about OpenAI. Okay, it's not. Microsoft's changed a lot in the last couple of years. It's now kind of one of the biggest open source contributors to the Linux project. So Microsoft also offers a lot of LLMs on its platform, which are not OpenAI. And so just a quick kind of quick look at our Azure Machine Learning Studio. Very quick, we'd have to probably do a proper session on this at some point. But within that, you've got notebooks, automated machine learning. You've got a low-code designer for SMEs building ML models. You've got prompt flow, which allows you to create very complex multi-term, multi-source applications. We've also got this model catalog, which is based on the Hugging Face catalog. And if you have a look in there, you've got the new Phi 3 mini models, which are really, really quite powerful, really cheap to host. But you've also got the Meta models, the Falcon models. You've got pretty much the latest and greatest and best from the open source community. So what I didn't want to do is you kind of go away thinking all I can use on Azure or Microsoft today is the OpenAI platform. So just moving on, I just wanted to kind of summarize a little bit in general terms about the types of things that we're seeing customers using this for. So obviously the things around things like chatbots, is an obvious one. And, in the past, who in here has tried to build a chatbot in the past? Yeah. Okay. So it's really, really tough because your customers can come along and ask things in 100 different ways, and the intent is the same. So you kind of have to program for all those. So, GPT, LLMs, they give us an advantage there, which simplifies that. But where we see the biggest take up is actually around things like call center analytics. So if you've got someone on the phone talking to a customer, when they finish that call, they then have to go and update the notes. So you can do that automatically. Also, we talked about that sort of time to skill up a contact center worker. You can actually provide them real-time feedback as they're on the line with the customer about what's the next action. What should they be talking to the customer about? What should they suggest? You could pull information from the back end, from a knowledge base, to give them the right information. So there's a lot of use cases there, not all of them kind of industry specific. One of the other most common ones, and I think this is probably a lot of people in this room will have already done this if you sort of tried with LLMs, is a RAG-based search where you're using an LLM to front a search engine. So that's really good to add a chat-based interface to a knowledge base within the organization. Now, if you don't have the skills to do that today, you can use SharePoint, also now does that. So the other thing is that, when we think about these things, we think they're very tech heavy. We think about coding. We think I've got to be a genius to make this stuff work. The reality is now you don't. Anyone in here can go away and build one of these applications. So to kind of give you a sense for how that is, I've got, and I apologize now, it's a really kind of markety video, but so an apology, it's kind of got like a horrible music track to it as well. But what I wanted to do is, it's probably the fastest way, given I've only got 20 minutes and I've probably burnt past my 20 minutes already, to kind of give you a sense for how you can drag, drop, click your way into producing these really cool chatbots. So let me roll that. So yeah, sorry about the marketing video. I'd love to do a demo of that sometime, but I think it's probably sort of a 10, 15-minute demo to pull something together to make it interesting. But yeah, so you can pull applications together really quick with no particular knowledge of code, which is fantastic. So just coming back to the LLM. So I mentioned at the beginning, Microsoft's put a lot of effort into building generative AI capability into the applications which you probably use on a day-to-day basis, or maybe use depending on what, whether you're using Google Office or Microsoft Office. So it's kind of embedded those into lots of the stack. So the modern work stack, which is Microsoft Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, there's now co-pilots in that. In the Power Platform, which is the video I just showed you there, building low-code applications, you can now create low-code applications by describing in natural language the application. The Security Copilot, which allows you to manage security incidents. GitHub Copilot, we mentioned that earlier. If you're a coder, check it out. But the last thing I want to talk about before I get thrown off the stage for overrunning my time is the data platform. And I think this is where we always talk in organizations, big and small, about democratizing data, about giving people access to data to do what they want. But the big barrier to that entry is skills. And the skills are, does everyone have time to learn Tableau or Power BI or a reporting tool? Most people end up day in, day out, unfortunately, dealing with data in Excel or Google Sheets or something like that. And it's not ideal. So what Microsoft's done is, any Power BI users in the room? Couple. So Power BI, Microsoft visualization tool, very similar to Tableau or Looker or Click, if you've ever come across those. So what Microsoft's done is it's taken Microsoft Power BI and it's kind of done to it what it did with Excel to Office. So Power BI to Fabric, as is now the logical evolution of Power BI, is what Excel is to Office. So it's an entire end-to-end data stack. It does everything as a SaaS service. We've got everything there. Oh, sorry. Everything is a SaaS service. So everything from data integration through to data warehousing, real-time observability, real-time analytics, and of course, data visualization. So all of that is now in a single box. But of course, that doesn't really solve the problem of, do you have the skills to use it? So what we've been doing over the last couple of months, and there will be more of these unveiled at Microsoft Build in May, which you should sign up for. It's a great event, and it's virtual, so you can join from anywhere, is we put co-pilots into some of the products, and so more to come. But I'm going to show you today one in Power BI, allows you to create reports and analyze data and create commentaries. We've also got ones for data engineering and building ML models, and also self-service data preparation with natural language. So best way to show you guys is just to show a quick demo. So let me roll this. So what I've got here is I've got an Azure SQL database that I've replicated into Microsoft Fabric. So I've got a couple of options here. So I can go ahead and I can automatically create a report based on the metadata structure of the data, or I can choose to create my own report. So I've got this Copilot experience on the right-hand side. So it's come up and it said, well, do you want me to suggest content for this report? Or do you want to create a page that shows, and then you can put in what you want that page to do? So if you understand the data set. You can also get it to describe what's in the data set. And actually, since I made this video, this has kind of got a lot more detailed, a lot better. So this is looking at the metadata model of your data, and it's returning a description of what's in that data set, which can be quite handy if you don't know the data set, you're generally looking around to find the right data. So now I can go and say, well, okay, what should I put in this report? How should I analyze this data? I don't understand this data set. So it's come back with a few options here, or a few suggestions for analyzing the data. Loan performance by region, loan purpose and condition, loan application and issuance, and loan quality and risk. So this is a loans database. Sorry, I didn't say that at the beginning. So I can go ahead and create that. Now, screen real estate's a bit tight here, so just go and shut those ribbons. And then it will whir away for a bit in the background, looking at the data and the metadata, and it's going to produce you a report. Now, this might not be the final report that you want or you end up with, but it's a good start. And if you don't understand the data set and you don't know how to work with the data, it kind of gives you that sort of starter for 10. So it's all right, again, lowering that barrier to entry, preventing you have to learn all of these tools. So it's a normal report. I can go ahead, I can interact with that report, I can build on it. It could be a starting point. Now, to take that one step further, in most organizations, we kind of create an industry out of writing commentary. So I don't know if any of you work in large organizations, but the thing happens where you have to write a commentary of data for your boss, right? And your boss takes that commentary of data and they cut it down by about half and they send it to their boss, and their boss kind of summarizes it into a sentence and puts it in a board report. And then somebody on the executive committee never looks at it, right? And so everywhere, all the way through these organizations, we're just creating commentary on data. So what we've done here, and let me just play that, is we've added a new AI narrative visual into Power BI, which does that job for you. So it's just there. It's called narrative. So you can drag and drop that like any other visual onto the page. And this allows you to start to ask questions about the data that automatically create the commentary. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to say, well, okay, answer likely questions from leadership. So it's going to analyze that data. It's going to look at it. It's going to look at the trends that are in the charts, the trends that are not there. So you can limit it to a specific chart on the page, or you can have it look holistically at the entire data set. You can go off and run that. So based on the data, what questions are likely to be asked by leadership? And it's produced me a nice summary of the types of trends and notable outliers that are in the data. Now, the great thing about this is that as you kind of aggregate up the data, as you go up the hierarchy or you change the filters, that commentary gets updated automatically. If you embed this report in PowerPoint, for example, every time you open the PowerPoint, the commentary is updated. So that's kind of almost where I want to leave it, because I think I can see the light flashing at the back of the room. So the takeaways are not very great takeaways, because I did this slide just before I came up here. But I think the takeaway for me is that, if you haven't looked at some of this stuff, have a look at it. It's not as hard to get started. The barrier to entry is no longer that high because that tools ecosystem is there. So any questions, please come and grab me over a beer, and love to chat more. So thank you very much.
Which one should I use? This one. Yeah, thanks, Matt. That was great. We're going to have a panel discussion at the end. So please save any questions from the talks for that, and we can cover them then. Our next speaker is Tancredi. I'll bring him up. Please give him a round of applause.
Hello, hello. Thank you. I'm going to stand because I prefer to stand when I present. Cool. So my name is, hello, perfect. My name is Tancredi De Pretto. Most people at Microsoft know me as Tank. I write that with a K because no one's going to stop me from doing that. I'm a data and AI specialist at Microsoft, but more importantly for this talk, I'm a responsible AI champion. You're probably noticing the fresh face here. I've been a responsible AI champion for 2 years here, so I do know what I'm talking about. I'm incredibly passionate about responsible AI, but I do not want to bore you today with my passions. Today, I want to inspire you to realize the value of why you should implement responsible AI into every single one of your organizations here today. So let's set the scene first. I always start with this slide just to give us an idea as to what are sort of the risks involved with AI. So the first 3 use cases here, I want you to spot what's the real, what do they all have in common here? The first one is all about when we see governments using mass surveillance techniques to monitor people's actions and movements. Second one here is all about AI making decisions that will have huge impacts on people's lives and that can negatively impact their lives as well. And then we have a third example here with bias in AI systems, namely facial recognition systems. So if you haven't guessed it, I'm coining these as irresponsible AI. But more importantly, these are high impact use cases on society. Now, AI is a social technical system. For those of you who may not know what it means that it's a system that has both good and potentially bad implications on society, depending on the use case. So that's very important here. We have to be mindful of, depending on the use case, this can have a severe consequential impact. So this is something that Microsoft has been aware of. We've been working on, and we've been doing a ton of research on this. It's not only Microsoft now, it's also governments around the world. So ever since the wake of ChatGPT, we've seen a lot of governments around the world that are beginning to understand that, hey, we actually need regulation. And we see that as a really good thing. We're actually collaborating a lot with a lot of governments around the world as to how they can best approach regulation while not hindering innovation. So that's very key here. To name a few, the more important one here, just because it's pretty imminent, is the EU AI Act. Now, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of depth into here. I know Adebisi afterwards is going to go into more depth into the AI Act and the UK regulation. But just to give you a sense here, this is coming into play. We will have to be prepared. We will have to be compliant if we're adopting AI. The same thing goes for the UK. Now, we don't have a full view as to what the UK has proposed yet, apart from some white papers and a pro-innovation approach that they've published throughout last year, and they're working on their own regulations. Again, Adebisi will talk to you a bit more about that and how to prepare for it. But essentially, just to get the sense here, a lot of governments are preparing for this. Let's move over to what are some of the business impacts that AI can have. Now, this is an example with Air Canada, and it's not the only example. I'm going to show you a very funny one afterwards. It's one example of many that we're going to start seeing of AI use cases actually failing. And this is really important to note, because if we are going to adopt AI, we want to make sure that we're doing it successfully, right? We don't want to have any failures. So this is a textbook use case of how to not go about implementing AI. And I'll go into a little bit as to how responsible can actually help to solve and help to mitigate some of these issues that Air Canada faced. So who here is aware of Microsoft Tay? Oh, I'm glad there's not too many of you. Okay, good. Right. So I can't come up here and actually talk to you about other companies failing with their AI projects without talking about Microsoft failing with our own AI projects. And I think it's pretty fair to say we actually have to own up to our own mistakes and learn from them. So if you're not aware about Microsoft today, I'm not going to go into too much detail. Just have a quick research afterwards. By the way, this happened in 2016, not recently, okay? This is something that we had to learn from. This was a huge, monumental mistake. And this whole speech, this whole topic of responsible AI is sort of our journey from learning from mistakes like these to ensure that we mitigate them and we make sure that we don't repeat these same mistakes. So all this leads us with 4 questions. How can we prevent irresponsible applications? We don't want all of our businesses actually creating impacts to society that's going to harm society. We want to make sure that our organizations are benefiting society, at least I'd hope. How do we prepare for future incoming regulations? It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So how do we actually remain compliant? How can businesses create competitive advantage with AI? So how can we actually ensure that whatever we're creating is actually driving success and not hindering our business? And how can businesses engender trust in their AI systems? This is where I offer responsible AI as a framework of principles to build off of that every single organization should be thinking about today. Now, this is our own set of principles that we've adopted since 2016, since our CEO, Satya Nadella, wrote a blog post about how we need to learn from our mistakes, such as today, and build off of those mistakes and make sure that we adopt AI responsibly going forward. Now, these are timeless values that will encompass all AI systems, not just generative AI. This didn't come out yesterday. This came out. This is a years of research that has developed into these 6 principles that we believe are timeless values that will uphold all AI systems. So let's go through them. The first one here around fairness is all about how can we ensure that there's no bias in our AI systems, or at least mitigate as much as possible the bias that might be found in our AI systems. It's all about creating fair outcomes. So we want our AI systems to ultimately deliver fairness in the outcomes that they produce. Reliability and safety, that's all about how can we ensure that we're thoroughly testing our systems, that they're performing under foreseen and unforeseen circumstances. This is something, for example, Air Canada did not take into account. Privacy and security. How do we think about data privacy? How do we think about other security features that we put around all of our other applications that are non-AI? How do we actually think about that in terms of AI as well? So we have to think about putting privacy and security measures in AI systems as well. Inclusiveness. This is where we're putting accessibility at the forefront of AI. We can't expect the world to adopt AI if we're not giving it to people of all different abilities. So it's really important that we have our accessibility piece here as well as part of our 6 principles. You'll see underpinning these, right? They're not all 6 principles that are built equally. Underpinning these are the principles of transparency and accountability. This is because these are the most important ones. Transparency is all about how transparent are we about the limitations, the capabilities, and how people should be using our AI systems. From our perspective, we offer transparency notes. So if you look on Azure AI services, for every single AI service, we have a transparency note that tells you how to use it, its limitations, where you can find benefit from it as well, but also how to not use it. From an end user perspective, think of perhaps chatbots, right, that are getting ever more human-like. How can we ensure that everyone is fully aware that they're interacting with a chatbot? Because that is incredibly important to engendering trust. Lastly, we have accountability. So accountability is all about who is going to be accountable when something goes wrong. It's not about should something go wrong, it's about when something goes wrong. There will always be something that we have to fix. There will always be some little detail that we have to mitigate or have to respond to. So do we have the right people aligned to ensure that we are accountable? It's ultimately about human control. We can't have AI systems running wild in our company without any human control. So this is our responsible AI journey. I'm not going to go through every single piece of detail here, but essentially we've started back in 2016, working towards it up until now. Responsible AI is a continuous journey, and we expect it to be a continuous journey for everyone who adopts it, and we'd hope so, because there's always things changing in the industry, such as generative AI, which is going to have huge impacts for how we adopt responsible AI going forward as well. One of the key things I wanted to highlight here is in 2017, we created sensitive uses. Now, I want to share this with you in light of what the EU regulation is going to propose. And I want you to have that in your mind when I'm going through this, and it'll make sense. So these sensitive use cases are an example of ethical AI, which is not responsible AI. Responsible AI and ethical AI, two completely different things. Well, not completely different, but ethical AI is part of responsible AI. Ethical AI is all about what are sort of the ethical dilemmas that we face within AI systems from a socio-technical perspective. Responsible AI is all about how do we actually adopt and deploy AI systems responsibly. So sensitive use cases, the first one here, we have 3 big buckets, and this is all part of our policy internally. So internally, we do not develop any AI system that falls within one of these 3 buckets. The first one here is all about denying consequential services. So any HR department that's come to you, or if you are a part of the HR department, you better want to listen. Any sort of HR department that's thinking about a full candidate recommendation system for hiring without any human oversight, please do not do this. If I'm going to call out Air Canada and ourselves, I'm also going to call out our competitors, Amazon, for doing this a couple years ago, where they implemented something exactly like this, and they did not hire any women as a result of that. That's just bias. That's the impact that AI systems can have. So that's why it's a system that we do not allow on our platform. It's completely prohibited. Next, risk of physical or psychological harm. This is more towards the medical and pharmaceutical industry, but can also affect certain other industries, such as probably tobacco and alcohol industries, where their products and thereby their AI systems with their products could be detrimental to mental and well-being and so forth. So any mental and health well-being systems that are fully run by AI systems without any human control, any medical diagnostic systems, for example, these are completely prohibited. There has to be some sort of human oversight for these use cases. Lastly, this is the big one, threat of infringement to human rights. That's the big ones, right? Social credit scoring systems, surveillance systems. I haven't listed all use cases here. This is just a quick glimpse as to what falls into these 3 buckets. But coming back to the EU regulation, the EU regulation is all about risk. I want you to take this as inspiration to prepare for things such as the EU Regulation Act. If we're taking a risk-based approach already, we can already be prepared for things such as EU AI Acts and other regulations that are coming into play. Why? That's because all of these, every single regulation that's coming out is all about risk, is all about societal impact. So if we adopt something like this, we can already be compliant, and we can ensure that our systems are not causing any harm to society. So this is where I want to really go into more detail. I want you to see the business value of responsible AI. Now, I know it's something you probably don't hear often, and you probably think responsible AI is only ethics, it's only about creating trust, it's only about creating secure systems. It's much more than that. And I want to change your minds today to think about responsible AI in a completely different light. So I've highlighted 3 key value drivers here as to why every single organization should be thinking about responsible AI. The first one is all about competitive advantage. I want you to think about, if you're adopting responsible AI, you're creating controllable, interpretable, and robust systems that are, as a byproduct, going to actually increase the quality of innovation. So think of responsible AI as actually making your systems a better performing system. Just because you're going through all those checks and balances as to how to mitigate risk, how to actually create, you're going through all those principles, which are actually, as a byproduct, creating that system that is going to be a well-performing system. You're also increasing speed of deployment. So if you already have the policies, you have the tools that you're going to use to develop responsible AI, you have everything from the people, the process, the technology, you have everything already in place. That increases speed of deployment. We don't then have to necessarily go speak to legal every single time we want to deploy an AI system, or at least less so. Second one is all about regulation readiness. Now, this is a big one, and this is probably what everyone thinks coming into this room, that responsible AI is all about regulation readiness. Yeah, no. I mean, it's a big part of it, but it's not the end all be all of why we do responsible AI. It's absolutely a big part of it because we have to be compliant, and responsible AI does in fact help us get 80–90% of the way there through compliancy, because responsible AI deals with the same manners and the same things that regulation is trying to fix. So that's definitely the second key value driver here for responsible AI. The last one here is kind of going to be a shocker. The risk of failure rate for AI projects is as high as 80%. Now, this was taken before generative AI was a thing, but I think it's still relevant. 80% for failure rate is too high for any business leader to actually look at AI and say, yeah, I'm actually going to invest into it. So how can we drive that risk down? That's where we see responsible AI practices coming into play. So we've seen through BCG, they did a study where they saw nearly a 30% decrease in the risk of AI project failure. You're basically going from a 20% success rate to a 50% success rate. Anyone here who won't take those odds, please raise your hand right now. So how do we actually adopt responsible AI? Now I'm going to go through how Microsoft has done it from our perspective, and I'm also, as a byproduct, going to show you how you can also adopt it internally. So firstly, these 6 principles that we showed you, are not self-executing. You can't just stick them, you can't just print them on a nice piece of paper, put them on the wallpaper and call it a day. We actually have to go about executing every single one of these principles as a whole system together. They're also open to interpretation. So what we think is fair, what you think is fair, what you think is accountable is probably different to how we define it. And we're not saying that you have to have the exact same definition of what our principles are. What we're saying is that every single organization should have an idea and an actual well-documented understanding of what those principles mean. It's also incapable of answering the question of how. So we go through a typical people, process, technology adoption framework. Internally, we've done a lot on the people side, and that's really the toughest bit here. I'm going to get to that afterwards. The first thing I want to go over here is processes and technology. The first thing here is Responsible AI Standard version 2. So you'll see it's version 2. The first one is already released, but now we have a newest one that's more updated. We'll have more ones coming out, sharing with our customers as well. This is our internal playbook. So it has all of our principles. Within every single principle, we have every single one of our goals as well. So how do we actually go about doing accountability? How do we actually go about doing transparency? So I want you to take those as best practice for your own organization and tailor it to what your business needs. The second bit here is all about technology and how we perform impact assessment templates. Sorry, how we perform impact assessments. So this is where we have our own template that we share as well with customers. So this is something I'll share at the end as well. The impact assessment is used for whenever we have a sensitive use come into play. So whenever we have a sensitive use that's being raised, either through internally or through a customer, we have an impact assessment. We go through that impact assessment and we make sure that we're mitigating the impact that it'll have on society. Next, we also have responsible AI tooling in Azure. I'm not going to go through into detail, but essentially we have 30 tools on Azure AI that help you with both generative and predictive AI models, and ensuring that you're developing these responsibly. To give you an idea, we have hallucination mitigation solutions. We have prompt injection attack mitigation and assessments. We have all these toolings that's going to help you within your responsible AI development. Let's get to people. Now, people is the most difficult thing to do here because we actually have to find a way to encourage everyone in the organization that's developing AI systems to actually do so responsibly. That's easier said than done. And we're still learning, right? From a Microsoft perspective, we're still learning. We're still trying to do as best as we can. But really what I want to highlight here is that CEO engagement is incredibly important here. Our own CEO has been engaged in this process since the beginning, since 2016. And actually what we see with CEO engagement, it really matters because there's a 58% increase in business benefits that you get with responsible AI practices when a CEO is properly engaged. Now the CEO doesn't have to go in depth, but they have to be the one that's actually sponsoring it. This can also be just any C-level exec, right? Anyone who's who's leading the organization has to see the business value of responsible AI if we're going to adopt AI across organizations today. So before I go, I want to leave you with this, with some food for thought. I want you to ask yourself the question: how do we, as a society, expect users across the world to adopt AI if they cannot trust the systems that they're using? Thank you very much for your time. You won't get me off the stage just yet. Responsible AI tooling, there's a QR code for that. There's a lot of good info there if you're a developer, you want to use responsible AI tooling, that's what we have on Azure AI. This is a really useful one here on the right that has our impact assessment template, our responsible AI standard. Go have a read at it. Go see how you can take our best practice, our years of research, so you don't have to do all that research yourself. Take that best practice and take it into your own organization. See how responsible AI fits within your own organization. And leave it for a little bit, because there's another QR code. And this is our recent responsible AI transparency report. This is what we're doing every year. We're sharing our learnings. We're sharing how we're succeeding, sometimes how we're failing as well. So this is our full transparency report to show you how we're adopting responsible AI so that you can learn from it as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tank. That was completely fantastic, as was Matt before that. You have had a lot of content in the last hour. We are running a little bit over time, but I'm also aware that I've had you sitting in seats for over an hour now. So I think we'll have just 5 minutes quickly. Anybody who wants to buy a break, now is the time to grab one. But we will only keep it a hard 5 minutes, and then we've got one fantastic speaker for you. and specializes in legal and ethical AI and its implementation. He's going to talk to us about the implications to us and our business of the EU AI Act and the environment that we work in. So with no further ado, I'm going to pass you over to BC. Get rid of this echo.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Thank you. So, where is this thing? Okay. So my name is Adebisi Adewusi. You can call me BC for short. Is that my fault? Is it my fault? Okay. Right. So, like Graham said, I'm a policy consultant in AI. I've been doing this for since 2017. Not as long as Graham, but I've been around a bit, and basically my work has been centered around the impact of AI in terms of the societal impact and the economic impact. I have conducted research on the impact of AI in the MENA region. So when we say MENA, we mean the Middle East and Africa. In the UK here, I have done work as part of Technopolis, conducts evaluations for Innovate UK, the EU Commission, the Alan Turing Institute, as well as Innovate UK, looking at investments in AI and their impact overall. Doing that for a while, and it's been great work. And some of the work I have done have been referenced by DCIT, which is the Department for Science and Technology, in their Future of Compute report. That was about 2 years ago, so that was a nice piece of work there. So on to the good part, or not so good part, if you're not a fan of government and policies. So the AI policy landscape overall in the EU and the UK is what I'm going to talk about briefly. Tank mentioned the EU and UK in brief. I'm going to give a high-level overview at the same time because of time. Basically, what we see when it comes to the AI policy landscape is that we're seeing a move from discussions and conversations to actual regulations. We're no longer dancing around. We are coming strong with regulation. And what governments are trying to do is actually find a balance between promoting innovation and not stifling innovation. But as you would all agree, that's not an easy task. It's easier said than done when you think about it. Now that the AI regulations are coming into effect, we're seeing different approaches to regulating AI. Two key legislation that have come into being in the past 1 year is the US executive order on AI, which Biden introduced late last year, I think in October. This was quite strategic, the timing. It was done before the UK AI summit. So this was kind of like a soft power move in the political arena globally to just show that the US is at the forefront of responsible AI. We'll see. So anyway, this order has a focus on responsible AI deployment and development, with a key focus on things like innovation, cybersecurity, worker support, so that has to do with skills, and the consideration of AI bias and civil rights, which is a huge issue in America because of the kind of society it is historically, and also the use of the impacts of AI on consumer protection and privacy and things like that. The US is trying to be a leader in the responsible AI space, but everybody in terms of countries are trying to be a leader in that space. So there's a bit of a war going on there. The EU, the executive order on AI is something that the US is trying to ensure that different departments have a policy on how they will determine AI will be regulated. So that's the US approach. It's not a very autocratic approach. It's kind of like giving agencies the free will to do as they please. It's a bit kind of a flexible approach. The EU AI Act, which is the most important one in my opinion, because Brussels has a history of leading when it comes to issues regarding safety and technologies. So the EU AI Act came into being early this year. And what it is like a legal framework on how companies should develop and deploy, as well as design artificial intelligence technologies. And what they have done this time is take a risk management approach. So what we'll be seeing is the risks are categorized into 4 categories. The first being the unacceptable risks. So these are the AI technologies that companies cannot make. And you have the second tier being the high risk tier. These are things that companies can make AI powered tools in this area. However, they have to conduct some form of assessment before these tools are deployed into the market and after they've been deployed into the market. And we have things like limited risks. This has to do with things like chatbots on your websites and things like that. And the minimal risk has to do with things like AI used in gaming and stuff like that. So I'm going to show you a slide here. My next slide has this in a more graphical sense. The articles, when you see ART 5, ART 6, these are just references to the EU AI Act itself, but this is based on the old version of the Act, so forgive the numbering, it's updated now. So like I said earlier, we've got 4 levels of EU AI risks. The first one is these are the AI technologies that are prohibited. So like Tank said, social scoring, so anything that has to do with ranking people based on certain social or economic characteristics, you can't do that. Facial recognition. So this particular area was a bit tricky. What the EU wanted initially was to ensure that facial recognition systems are not put into the market. But what they got to, the agreement was that facial recognition systems will not be used in public spaces. So that was the consensus they arrived at. So things like dark pattern AI and manipulation, you can't do that. Those are prohibited now. The key thing in the EU AI Act is the high risk AI technologies. So that has to do with things like the use of AI in educational assessments, in employment, like your CV tools and recruitment tools, also in justice, immigration, most especially, and law. Those are the high risk areas. So these are really high risk because they are linked to human rights issues, as well as things like patient rights and immigration. That's very important. Also in the high risk assessment, high risk area are things relating to the use of AI in energy and transportation as well. So if you're deploying, designing, or using AI in these areas, you have to be very, very careful. I'm going to switch slides now. Sorry. So, okay. So if you are developing or deploying any AI technology that is labeled as high risk, you have to be careful. You have to make sure that your models or systems are being evaluated in some form before it comes into the market and after it's put in the market. So it's a continuous evaluation process you have to keep on doing. And the EU is ready to go big and hard on anyone who infringes any of the legal requirements in this area. So I'm going to switch back to the other slide now. So we have the limited risk category. These are your chatbots, deepfakes, and things like that. And what happens here is that if you use these technologies in any form, for instance, on a website, there's a chatbot talking to your customers. What you need to do as a business is to say that, FYI, there is an AI chatbot talking to you, and it's not a person. So there needs to be that transparency when you're using your chatbot on your website. That's what you have to do as a business when you're using the limited risk kind of AI systems. This also includes your emotional recognition systems. And the minimal risk, which is like the lowest level of risk, are things like your spam filters or AI in video games. Like, the EU doesn't really care. You're fine. So back to this slide here. So it shows your prohibited risk, social scoring, your high risk recruitment, medical devices, and that's what you need to pay attention to, and your minimal or no risk. So this is a brief, short overview of what the EU is doing in this area. So who is subject to the AI Act? In summary, everybody. You can't hide, you can't run from the EU, Brussels. So all the actors involved in AI need to be aware of these issues. So the providers, deployers, importers, distributors, and product manufacturers who are involved in the deployment, the usage, or distribution of these systems will be held accountable. Tank spoke about accountability earlier because there is a tendency to refer to AI as a thing, and in that manner, we give it kind of human characteristics, like the AI did that. But who is the AI? So when we say the AI malfunction, like it's a person who had an episode or something, but it's not a person, it's someone deployed it, right? So who is that someone? So that someone cannot be faceless. So everybody here is someone. So these are the people, all different actors involved in AI are subject to the AI Act. And the AI Act also applies to providers and deployers of AI systems located outside of the EU. So you can't run away from Brussels. Do you get you? And so what is the penalty? So the penalties for non-compliance with the AI Act, they're quite significant. They range from 5 million to 40 million euros. Or 1% to 7% of the global annual turnover of a business. I don't know how much your business rakes in every year, but if you do the math of it, I mean, how many businesses will still exist if you're going to get a fine of this proportion? So that's why there's this conversation around, is the EU AI Act stifling innovation or is it promoting it? Because when you look at this from this angle, it's like the EU does not support innovation because, come on, 5 million, 40 million, come on, you're not. Surely other governments will move faster than you if you're going to, put this type of penalties. But there is a reason for the EU AI Act, and what is foundational to that reason is the fact that human rights take precedence over certain things. Innovation is great. We get the point. However, do we sacrifice commerce and profit over things like human rights and ethics and responsible innovation? That is the question that we need to answer and think about. Some people are of the opinion that you can't put capitalism and ethics in the same statement. I don't know how true that is. I don't know if we can do that and how successful we can be. But anyway, moving on. So these to the right is a list of the penalties and how much you're going to pay if you go against the EU AI Act. So the first one is non-compliance with the prohibition of AI practices. You get 40 million max penalty. The non-compliance with data governance and transparency requirements relating to high-risk AI systems, you've got 20 million or 4% of your worldwide annual turnover. Emphasis on worldwide, okay. And non-compliance with other requirements relating to high-risk AI, you've got 10 million there. And providing false or misleading information to national competent authorities, you've got 5 million. I'm not quite sure. I think the EU AI Act has this clause whereby there will be like a body responsible for notifying people when there is an infringement of the AI Act or something. So there has to be national competent authorities. So that, in summary, this is the sober reality of the EU AI Act. Moving on to a less gloomy landscape, less gloomy in the sense that the UK AI policy landscape is not as high-handed as what we have in the EU. So in the UK, we've got a pro-innovation and risk-based approach to AI regulation. So it's kind of a free-for-all, but not so much, in that it's like, so it's regulator-led and sector-specific. It's a kind of flexible and more innovation-forward approach, in my opinion, in that every sector would decide how they want to regulate artificial intelligence. So that gives you don't have a blanket regulation like you have in the EU. So everybody go do what you want. So finance, education, healthcare, determining how they want to regulate artificial intelligence. So it's however unclear how these responsibilities will be delegated within these sectors. So this approach, like I said, encourages innovation and tries to limit the barriers and potential impacts. That's the negative impacts from AI. So the UK's AI policy is guided by the key AI principles that stem from the OECD principles overall. So emphasis on safety, transparency, fairness, and accountability, as Tank mentioned. I think Microsoft has got that as well. Most of these principles stem from the OECD principles, which has been around for a long time, and many countries are signatory to. So the key policy documents we've got are the UK National AI Strategy. It sets out a 10-year plan for how the UK proposes to govern AI. I say propose because it's a proposal at this point, because we don't have set regulations. And we've got the AI regulation white paper, which also sets out AI principles. Those are the key principles there. So we've got safety, security, transparency, accountability, fairness. These are all based on the OECD principles to me. So talking about the larger ecosystem, the key regulators and actors who are going to decide how AI will eventually be regulated in the UK are CAM, which is the Competition and Market Authority, Ofcom, very big player, very huge on misinformation as well. So the Office for AI and the Center for Data Ethics and Innovation. You've got the NHS as well in the healthcare sector, and DCIT. So what we've been seeing so far is no actual regulations, but lots of consultations with different groups and stakeholders in every industry. But the trend I am seeing, I have mapped out, is that CAM, which is the Competition and Market Authority, is taking a kind of high-handed approach to things, coming from the angle of AI will pose so many dangers. So how do we prevent the dangers? They're not really highlighting the benefits that are going to be realized from artificial intelligence. So we have to be careful. On they may go very hard on businesses, or they may not, but we'll see. In terms of UK policy trends, there's a huge focus on responsible AI, in that we've seen a lot of funding going to research on the impact of AI when it comes to the society and also the economy, as well as underrepresented groups. We saw the setting up of the AI Safety Institute around last year. That's responsible, that's in charge of all this research. And something came out early this year, something called the DCIT areas of research interest. So these areas of research interest kind of map out where the government is going, what the government is going to do in terms of policy, and where they're looking for evidence on how to drive policy regarding AI. And when I read that document, it's about 100 pages, there is a lot of emphasis on the social and economic impact of AI, especially in the aspect of jobs and skills and upskilling. So that's something to look out for. So these are all the key players in the AI landscape. So in general, what does this mean for you? That's what you're concerned about. So what it means is that companies specializing in areas that the EU Act deems as high risk, we need to be attentive to the terms. So you probably need to have someone on your team who understands the EU AI Act, has read it, has digested it, and has actually seen what category you fall into. Do you fall into the high risk, the low risk, or the minimal risk? You need to know where you are in that tier, and you need to know what you need to do to be on the safe side. You need to think about auditing your systems. I think Tank mentioned that as well. I need to have a risk management framework on how this should be done. The risk management framework can seem a bit vague and very technical, so it's hard sometimes for businesses to interpret it. So what we did as part of the Brighton AI is to develop a framework which was based on UNESCO recommendations and Hiroshima principles and OECD principles. We came together, myself and Matt, we're part of the ethics group, and we developed the Brighton AI framework, which sets out how businesses can develop responsible AI practices and the framework. So it's like a guiding tool that you can use yourself to get started on being responsible with your AI development, design, and deployment. Okay, I don't have anything else to say here. I think what I would just end it with is that it's a hard conversation. There are no easy answers on how to go about regulating AI. It's still early days yet for many countries. And what you're going to see will be a clash of regulations because different countries have different approaches to how they want to regulate. So that means if you operate in, say, the US and the UK, you're going to have different regulations. And until there is a kind of clarity on how governments want to move forward on how to regulate AI in terms of having a concrete document, without that document and that clarity, it's going to be hard for businesses to know how to move forward in terms of innovation. So if, for instance, if you do not know what the regulation would be for, say, generative AI, you don't know where to move, you're going to hold back on research and investment, yeah? So it's pending that clarity, I think it's going to take a while for us to promote innovation. And I think not every problem requires an AI solution in general. So if you have a look at your business and you feel like, do I really need it? Do I have a problem that AI should solve? You need to ask yourself that question. Not every problem requires an AI solution. That's what I feel. And if you do feel you need an AI solution, you need to ensure that you're doing it responsibly and ensuring that everyone who should be in that conversation is in that conversation. So that means diversity of opinions on how you design, develop, and deploy AI. And I think the last thing I want to say is come join us in Brighton AI. We're looking for people who are interested in responsible AI design and development. So come join us and see how you can support making sure that the world is a world whereby we use AI for good, for profit, alongside if we can, and in general, just doing good work. So thank you.
Thank you, BC. That was awesome. Can I ask Tank and Matt to come up and sit on the sofa as well?
Jack and I are going to run around the audience. So any questions that you have for the panel, please let us know. Put your hand up, and we'll pass the mic to you before you answer your question.
Grab a seat. Do we have any questions for our panel on anything that we've heard this evening?
Yeah, we've got one here.
Hello. Thank you so much. So my question is, it was very interesting. There's a lot to think about on this side of impact of AI on society, etc., ethics. On the other side, we didn't talk about the environmental impact and how to be responsibly develop products because it uses a lot of data centers, and there's gonna be a point in the future where we won't be able to innovate because we're gonna run out of resources. I wonder if there's any, regulations or like how does Microsoft approach this? Yeah, thank you.
The environmental impact of AI. Who would like to take that? Matt?
Yeah, so Microsoft is very committed to reducing the environmental impact generally from data centers. So we've been investing in data centers for over 10 years now. We've got 63 data centers globally. If you think about it in a weird way, the biggest cost of running a data center is the electricity. It is sourcing the power, and we're constrained by power at the moment. So Microsoft is very obviously committed by, I think it's by 2025, 2030 is neutral, 2050, you should have answered this question. 2050 is negative. So, but I think there's a lot of innovation going in that space, not just because of the environment, but also because of the cost of the electricity. And so things like passive cooling instead of using air conditioning units. I think that the reality is that in the short term, you're absolutely right. There is a high cost of training these models. I think longer term, that is balanced out by improvements in hardware and reduction in cost. I don't know if Tank, if you want to add.
I do, in fact, want to add to this. Yes, to add to what Matt was saying, it's definitely going to be in the short term quite impactful. Yes, we have our own, we do have our own commitments to sustainability, but one thing I want us all to think about is that this has spurred AI chips to become more efficient. If AI chips are more efficient, that means they're using less power, right? The fact that generative AI is upon us today, it's really also spurred the innovations that we're going to start seeing in the energy sector. So now there's more of a need, right? And one of the actual limitations where we can go with AI going forward is actually with energy. It's not in terms of the data, it's actually in terms of how, this is one of the things that every single CEO of every single AI company is saying, energy is so important. So we're actually going to see this actually, it's actually going to influence more cost-effective and more sustainable energy sources that can actually sustain these models. And I think that's actually a really good benefit for sustainability as a whole, because we finally actually have something that's going to propel us towards and give us a capital reason as to why we need to actually invest in energy. So yes, we do have our own. We do have the problem today of energy is a huge factor of these generative AI models, and they are taking a whole lot of energy. But looking forward, this is going to drive a whole lot of investment towards the energy industry as a whole, which will be beneficial for all industries and actually beneficial for all humanity. So it's quite big picture thinking, I know, but I think we can be quite optimistic about that.
Thank you. Great talks, by the way, all of you. Yeah, I have a two-part question about, I suppose it's about the challenges of making good regulation. So the first part, my question is about specifically the EU regulation. And thanks so much for explaining the details of that. So specifically about the EU legislation, I wonder if there's the danger of well-intentioned but perhaps not well thought out regulation. So for example, I noticed, a great diagram by the way, I noticed on the unacceptable uses of AI, they had manipulation. So what does that mean? So does that mean if I make advertising copy using AI, that's unacceptable, but if I do it in Photoshop by myself, it's fine? So, I mean, maybe there's specifics in the legislation that have allowed for that, but I just wonder if that's a general risk when you emphasize safety with good principles out of good intentions. If you don't think it through, and if you don't actually understand the technology, you end up actually creating not good legislation. And then my second point is about, and I think several of you alluded to this, the likely case that different countries and jurisdictions end up with different rules and different regulation, which creates obviously problems for businesses, but actually doesn't it create problems for those countries as well? Because like we live in a globalized world, so you could sort of say, well, okay, that's fine. Each country at least has the right to create the laws around AI that they think is right for them. But we've got the internet. We get exposed to what is happening in other countries anyway. So for example, if you look at the previous technological revolution with social media, and the EU has traditionally been very, concerned with protections. And maybe that's part of the reason why there is no EU Meta, there is no EU sort of Instagram or anything like that, that there's a danger that if we just say, oh, that's fine, everybody does their own thing, but actually we're going to be affected by what others do anyway, and maybe that puts different countries at a disadvantage. So I'm just curious to your thoughts about all of that.
I'll start with your last question because that's one I remember. That's okay. So I think there will be a need for international collaboration when it comes to regulating AI, because different countries, like you said, will regulate it based on the way they want to, but there's going to be a point in time where all countries have to come together and say, okay, this is the way we're going to go internationally. So it's going to be something internationally. I think recently China and the US, or China and UK, had signed an agreement. So that is like pointing to where the future is going to. We may have our own political differences, but when it comes to regulating AI, which is quite broad and general purpose, we're going to have that international collaboration in place. And the first question was about manipulation.
Specifically about the EU, for example, saying that manipulation was unacceptable, and then does that mean if I use AI to do advertising copy, that's unacceptable, but if I do it without AI, that's fine?
Right, that's an interesting question. That's an interesting question. So I probably have to go back and read the EU Act in full. But like you said, there is a probability to err when you're not a technologist. However, I do believe that technologists were in the room when this law was put in place. Would there be some high-handedness? Yes. Would there be some initial baby step errors? Yes, because it's early days for AI as well. So I think we can forgive them for a little bit of high-handedness, I think. You want to add to that?
So I think I would just add to that the simple fact that copy has to be accurate and representative regardless of its source, and the legislation is the same for both. So if you misrepresent your product with something written by AI or something written by a human, then you're subject to the same advertising standards. So that I think covers the use case. And the interesting point with AI is the accidental misrepresentation of your product, as Tank was talking about with was it Air Canada, and the mis-selling products that they then get legally held to. You know, if your AI says that something's true and it says it in an official way, it's going to have to be true.
Just to quickly add on to that misleading part, the reason why that's in is because AI is a technology that scales. That's the reason why it's in there. Because yes, humans can do it. Yes, we can do it manually, but the reason why that's in there is because AI can do that the same way, but at scale. So always think about the reason why regulation's coming into play. The reason why we have all these risks is also think about the scale. That's all about the scale of what AI can do, what it can do in terms of a cognitive ability that what humans can do. It's all about the scale and making it even a bigger impact than it already is.
Yes, I think my question probably complements Pranas's question. So I'm going to start with an assertion and an opinion, and then finish with a question, if that's okay. So I mean, my assertion is that regulations always disproportionately impact challenges in comparison with the incumbents. Argue with me if you like. I mean, I've had some involvement with dealing with the Online Safety Act, the DSA, DMA, and so on, and there are, you know, there are measures in there to try and deal with that issue, and yeah, the Online Safety Act is the one I know best. That's obviously a risk assessment approach, so it's, you know, and that, which makes a lot of sense to me. I think there's a lot of good stuff in there. There's also a lot of, well, what can I say, not so good stuff. Well, I don't actually know that much about the EU AI Act, so I don't need to yet. But I'm kind of hoping to get without having to read hundreds of pages of the Act and all the stuff as I've done with the others. You know, is there any measures in the EU AI Act which the problem that I'm asserting?
I think that's the question.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so in the Online Safety Act, DSA, DMA, in a different way, smaller companies do not have to take the same measures as the big platforms like Microsoft. So, but I don't know whether that's the case in the AI Act.
But EU Act, it's basically the tier-based approach, the risk-based approach.
Yeah,
so
sure.
big company, small company, you've got 60 million, you don't have 60 million. You break those rules. You pay.
Yeah. But there are different measures you have to take in the other acts.
So the measures you take depend on the type of AI technology you're deploying or designing.
Yeah.
That's the guidance, not the size of the company itself.
But if we're deploying the same product as Microsoft, we have to take all the same measures as a small company that Microsoft take.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's what I feared.
Yeah, you feared. I think it's a quite... Well, it's a very equal approach. Like you treat the big companies the way you treat the small companies, so everybody plays right. So if we want fairness, it has to be equality, not so.
So I think the EU is making a big, massive mistake here. I mean, impact us, but not too much. But this is a huge mistake they're making. If that's what they're going to do.
So I completely understand your point. It's a really good one. But one thing just to bear in mind, if you remember BC's pyramid of risk, and the risk at the top is really around people who are developing the actual models themselves. There are companies out there of no more than 50 people that are developing quality LLM models, and you would expect them to be subject to the highest and most stringent standards. So there are small companies that can have very, very big impact. So your point's a really good one in terms of the rules and the regulations and how this is going to tie us up in red tape as we try and take advantage of AI. But it is possible with a small number of people to have a very big impact in this field.
You've got 10,000 users and your competitor's got millions of users. The impact wouldn't necessarily be. Maybe it depends on the application. If you've got an AI application which is developing bioweapons, then yes.
Yeah.
But not all the risks are
Yeah.
existential.
It is. I mean, Tank, I'm sure you'd agree. It's very, very early stages in the process of regulation. The UK is playing it a little bit cautiously at the moment and just making policies instead of statements. The EU has gone full on, as it likes to do. So there's a lot still to come.
So in looking at how the EU arrived at the tier-based risk approach system, they looked at the impact and worked backwards. So the tiers correspond to the level of impact. So when you have the high risk tiers are those that can have very, very big, huge negative impact if not regulated. So that gives us an understanding of why we have those kind of tiers. So from the impact, they worked backwards.
Cool. Go on.
Okay. Yeah, I want to come back to the regulation and the highest risk points. Okay. Social scoring is right up on the top. Now, does this cover our social scoring system, which is done by finance? Or is it just another cheap piece of anti-Chinese rhetoric, which makes the whole of the EU project rather invalid in a way? The second one I want to deal with is social manipulation. And I think, which haven't mentioned, is dark patterns, which they're particularly concerned with. They're things that you're not totally aware you're doing when you do them, and it leads you somewhere where you don't want to be. Now, one of those is called bait and switch. You'll have to look it up yourselves if you don't know it. But almost the majority of all sales on eBay are bait and switch. So again, it's right up there at the top, and the companies are just laughing at it. And finally, on the regulations, which isn't up there at the top, which should be, do I understand correctly that the EU rules, and possibly the British and everybody else's, will not be covering defence security, usually by hurting people, tracking people, or controlling people? And if this is the case, does it not drive a coach and horses right through the whole project of control? And how do you see bringing that in, apart from a few revolutions? Okay, there you go.
A lot to digest on that one. Enjoy answering that.
I think there is a caveat when it comes to national security and defense, and understandably so. Yeah, I was actually focused. Why do I get your point on why it should cover defense? Well, we see why it may not cover defense when we go into the geopolitics of AI technologies and different governments and what they are developing and how they are trying to proceed with defense. So yeah, it doesn't kind of cover national defense. And regarding social scoring and finance, it's not, in my opinion, it's not an anti-China rhetoric. I think social scoring is an important issue. And if you're going to decide who gets access to things like loans, credits, based on their data sets, which may or may not be correct historically, then there's a problem. So I'm quite comfortable with that regulation when it comes to fund.
The Chinese is actually discussable. Here, it's got hundreds of years of development, and it's quite pernicious. If the ruling elites or whatever don't like what you're saying, you don't get paid. you don't get access to everything.
Mm.
Yeah, you get driven out of universities, you get, whatever. So I think that it really does say that the EU is trying to pull the wool over our eyes about its fact that it wants to control things. It really is a political move. In that
Can I ask, do you know what Microsoft's approach is within? Sorry, I was just wondering whether you could comment on what your understanding is of Microsoft's approach to AI and defense. Obviously, defense is a big customer for Microsoft generally. Do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I'm passing the microphone to Tank.
Thanks, Matt. So our responsible AI sensitive use cases that I was showing up there, that applies to all of our customers, right? Regardless of whether that's retail, finance, and so forth. If we find any of those customers, if we discover any of those customers using such use cases on our platform, it is our own policy, and right, this is outside of regulation. This is what Microsoft is doing, right? We're trying to do our piece here in terms of upholding our ethical AI standards. Yes, we do have you probably know that we have the defense contract with, you guessed it, the US Defense. Our values are being upheld for all of our customers. Whether or not, I can't say for myself, I haven't really experienced it myself, whether that's true, but that's our policy. That's our policy, that it's upheld for every single one of our customers. So that's our position on it. Whether or not that's reflected in regulation, who's to say, right? There's not much that we can do from our perspective apart from just trying our best to influence AI regulation towards upholding the best ethical perspectives and responsible AI perspectives and values towards all organizations. It's a very tricky question, and I wasn't expecting that one. I can see you're a bit disappointed in the answer. I understand. No, I'm only Microsoft, so.
Sorry, that was maybe an unfair question. I'd just like to remind everybody that the fine gentlemen sitting here are, whilst they work for Microsoft, are not officially representing Microsoft tonight. They're talking about their understanding and their knowledge. Would have to go and get Satya to a Brighton AI meeting and actually ask him directly if we were going to do that.
I just wanted to make a few quick comments actually, just on what's been said. I mean, about the sustainability point that Tank was talking about. There are now a lot of smaller AI models coming onto the market. Llama, Amazon, Google, they're all bringing out smaller models that take up less compute. So the trend in the market is towards much more energy efficient AI models, which is, I think, answers the sustainability point. On the EU, in fact, a lot of EU leaders pushed back against the EU legislation, saying it was too rigid and restrictive because they wanted to see the emergence of startups like Facebook, like Instagram. And that's one of the reasons they did that, was to protect Mistral, which is AI companies in Europe. And on the regulation piece, there's a lot of interesting work that's going on in the US, particularly around copyright. There's been a lot of challenges to copyright and how models learn. And I think people might be interested to see some of the new partnerships that are being formed between the likes of OpenAI and the FT, for instance. So there's a lot of new partnerships now being struck up between AI companies and content providers so that they are fairer and there's no risk of copyright. And then also, if you're a small company and you're worried about getting into trouble, a lot of the large tech companies have said that we'll pick up your legal bills if you do.
Yeah, thank you. Very interesting. We've got Claire at the back. Claire.
Hi. Thanks to everyone. Really interesting talks. I've got a question about young people, about education, and about what your thoughts are, especially from a Microsoft kind of global corporate perspective, which looks at, well, the brand Microsoft. I'm an Apple person, but coming into Microsoft, I understand the power of that brand and the draw. And with that comes trust, and wondering what Microsoft, or you specifically as well, think about how they deal with that, and the education around what we've heard tonight, which is pretty intense, and a lot of us have got a good deal of knowledge around these things. So I'm talking about the average people who especially as you're developing more low code applications, and lower barriers to entry.
Okay, that is a great question. So what we didn't get a chance to talk about tonight, which is kind of built into all of the model as a services, is a content moderation framework. So every prompt that's going in and every prompt that's coming out is moderated for sexual content, harmful content, threatening behavior. It's a whole range of things, and that is on by default. Now, there is an exclusion procedure where you go through a sort of a relatively sort of lengthy process of getting that taken off. And admittedly, I work in financial services, so a lot of financial services companies say we want to regulate and manage our own implementations of the LLMs. But I think generally speaking, for most people using the LLMs, all the big ones like Azure, OpenAI, and the Meta ones hosted through Microsoft, you get that built in. And so alerts start to go off as soon as those models are abused. Now, that's the models as a service. I think the things you have to start to worry about, and I think it was Justin mentioned about the rise of much smaller models, which can run on lower cost compute and can be running on someone's desktop somewhere. They don't ship with content moderation frameworks. Okay, so they are the risk. It's when you take an LLM and you deploy it in an unmanaged way, and you don't have a content moderation framework, and that's really, and you'll see more and more of this where nefarious actors start to use those things to interact with people. If we think back to people receiving very enticing spam emails in the past, that's just the tip of the iceberg here. So I think from a Microsoft perspective, currently we're doing everything we can on the models that we offer and the models we host. And in fact, we have a partnership with Meta where the Llama model has an imposed content moderation framework to prevent harmful activity. I think outside of Microsoft and outside of maybe the other big tech providers who are trying to do things like this, as the compute costs come down, some of the more capable models get quantized or optimized, and they're smaller and they can run on lower cost hardware that anyone can afford. I think we're going to start to see this sort of wave of challenge. But in a way, that is, the internet is a bad place, right? I mean, you're out there in the middle of nowhere and there are people doing harmful things today. Now, the rate of change of those harmful things is likely to increase. All I can say at this point from a Microsoft perspective is we're trying to do everything we can to prevent nefarious behavior on our platform. And report on that abuse.
I think we've got time for 2 more questions in the room. I think this one was first, and then I'll come to you.
It was actually just a little comment, if that's acceptable. On the energy front, there was at the last Brighton AI, there was a really interesting talk where the guy was talking about how they'd used AI to optimize, I think it was delivery routes for like fruit and vegetable deliveries, and they'd managed to save like thousands of tons of food going to waste and loads of carbon and all these kind of good things, and by implementing a little AI solution that wouldn't have been possible otherwise, without AI. And I think that sort of the savings that can be brought about by new technologies need to be factored into the equation when you're working out whether they're good or bad from a usage of energy point of view. So I'm not going to pretend that's a question, but.
Thank you. Last question.
Thank you. So my question is slightly different. It's about the impact of Copilot and similar tools in Microsoft. Well, I went to the Paddington office a couple of weeks ago, and one thing that I noticed is Copilot banners everywhere. So my question is, how do you feel like internally the impact of this kind of tools? Like if you can comment on things that you are doing now that you weren't doing like a year and a half ago, or things like you are doing that you are not doing anymore.
Sure. Okay. I'll comment, then I'll pass it over to Tancredi to give a view. But for me, I'm a bit of a Luddite when it comes to the built-in tools in the Office ecosystem. But the one I'm kind of really enjoying at the moment is built into Teams meetings. So, you know, if you join a meeting late, you can type into the Copilot, you know, tell me what I've missed. You can, at the end of the meeting, get, you know, generate me a set of meeting actions, tell me the challenging points, tell me who disagreed with whom, you know, in so many words. It won't actually do that. And so for me, it's about being able to get more out of the meetings that I'm in. And I think people are generally lazy. And I think, you know, we used to go into meetings, someone would take notes, someone would then issue actions. People don't do that anymore. They're just lazy. But I think for me, the thing that's really revolutionized it is that Copilot in Teams pulling out those actions and then holding people to account for the things that they say they do.
Yeah, Matt stole my favorite one, so I'm going to have to come up with another one. No, so yeah, Teams Copilot is probably the most the direct impact that we've seen internally. Everyone's using it. From an interesting perspective, Matt and I deal with customers, and the one thing we always have to ask is, are you okay for this to be transcripted? So now it's all about, is this adopting externally as well, to the point that people are okay with having the conversation transcripted, not the face or what the content is being showing recorded, just the transcript, so that Copilot can generate a summary. I think that's probably a blocker, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? We don't want people to feel like they don't have any control over their data. That's always our policy, right? It's all about trust. So if we can't offer that option to them when we're interacting with customers, then that's not really great on us. That's not going with our trust policy. So there's that piece of adoption that's also really important. The reason why you saw those, and welcome to the 8th floor, by the way, of Paddington. The reason why you saw those posters is because we want internally everyone to adopt this, and adoption is very difficult. Like what I was presenting before, from a people perspective, when you have the tools, you have the policies, you have everything in place, the people part is so difficult. So we're doing our bit internally so that we can all learn Copilot, so we can then take that to our own customers and so forth. To give you an idea as to what I'm using it for, apart from Teams, is when I'm trying to look for an email, for example, that someone sent me and I just can't find it through normal search. Copilot is really good at just retrieving documents and even exploring documents I hadn't thought about that existed in our internal system. So it's really good for that search piece as well. And Copilot is helping me on all sorts of fronts, but it takes a while to get used to these things. And the last thing, and I know I'm probably overrunning on this topic. The last thing that's the most challenging thing is creating a habit. With every single new technology that comes out, is creating a new habit that's very difficult. So I think, Matt, you could probably agree, creating this habit of using Copilot isn't easy. But I think if we can all start to create this habit, it's going to enable us to be a bit more superhuman, to enable AI to do some of those tasks that are just too long for us, too hard to process, and just take up too much of our valuable time.
Cool. I think we're mindful that we've got to be out of here in 15 minutes. So I think a round of applause for everybody that presented tonight. Thank you very much. And yeah, thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. Graham, thank you to you as well for helping organising it with us. And yeah, any closing remarks?
And likewise, yes, thank you very much. Fantastic speakers this evening. Thank you very much for your patience and attention. We've got 15 minutes left here, so it is enough time for a drink. but we're also planning to go to the pub across the road. I forgot the name of it. Grace, where are we going? The Albion. So we're going to continue the conversation at the Albion after 9. If you want to stay with us and keep talking, it would be lovely to chat more to you. I have been asked very briefly just to say 2 things. So keep it really, really short. But there's this really interesting survey going on. I'd like you just to talk about it briefly.
So I'm Ödül Bozkurt. I'm a professor at the University of Sussex Business School. I'm here with my colleague Demi Russell from Cardiff. We are doing a study actually on pretty much the last question, which is about how the generative AI tools are being incorporated into the current arrangements of work and how it's impacting skills in SMEs in the Brighton region. So if you're in a small business, and I'm seeing some familiar faces, we've interviewed about 20 sort of so far digital sort of company representatives and workers. If there's anyone else here who can give us an hour of their time for an interview, we'd love to sort of connect with you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And 10 seconds, Danny, since we have a conference that's focused on AI happening in Brighton.
Yeah, if you're interested in the overlap between user experience design, research and management and AI, then UX Brighton, which is on the first Friday of November at the Dome, is going to be addressing that. It's a 1-day single track conference. We get the best people from around the world. We're advised by some of the best people in the world about what kind of speakers to get and things like that. So yeah, go to uxbride.org or just search UX Brighton anywhere and you'll get to the tickets that way. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, everybody, and good night. Thank you.
Thank you.